All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling dynamic flow theory. I've been looking over the stuff you sent over, and
Oh, yeah.
it's pretty wild. Honestly, I'm really curious to kind of unpack all of this with you.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a fascinating area. The DFT, it offers a pretty unique lens for understanding any system that, changes over time.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't matter if it's like a human society or an ecosystem or even, something like the stock market.
So before we get too far into it, can you just give us like a super quick, like what is dynamic flow theory in a nutshell?
Absolutely. Basically, at its core, DFT, it breaks down any complex system into three key components:
Yeah.
active participants, passive definables, and then interactions.
Okay, I think we need to break that down a little bit. What are, like, when you say active participants, what exactly are we talking about?
Think of them as the agents of change within a system.
Okay.
So, in a human society, participants could be individuals or organizations, even ideas that, gain traction and sort of influence how things work.
Okay.
In an ecosystem, participants might be different species,
Right.
interacting with each other and their environment.
So anything that's like making moves, having an impact.
Exactly. Now, those participants, they operate within a set of constraints or rules, right?
Right.
And that's where these passive definables come in.
Gotcha.
So think laws,
Okay.
cultural norms, or even something like DNA sequences
Yeah.
in a biological system.
Got it. So the definables are like setting the stage.
Right.
But then there are the interactions,
Yeah,
and that's where things get really like dynamic.
precisely. The interactions are the relationships and exchanges between the participants and how they, kind of play out within the boundaries set by the definables. So think like debates,
Right?
collaborations,
Yeah.
or even predator-prey relationships in nature.
Okay. So it's like a giant web, like this interconnected web where everything is constantly
Yeah.
influencing everything else.
That's a great way to put it. And what's really cool is that DFT isn't just about describing how things are.
Right.
It's about understanding how they change over time. That flow aspect. It's key to predicting
Yeah.
how systems might evolve in the future.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this can be applied to like all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But gotta ask, how do you even begin to track all these moving parts? It seems so complex.
Well, one way is to, build a DFT-powered digital system. Imagine a program that can monitor, all those interactions in real time, pulling data from various sources, like centers, social media, financial markets, you name it.
So we're talking about a system that can analyze the flow of information and all these interactions
Yeah.
to see how a system's changing.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Imagine feeding all that dynamic data into a large language model, an AI system.
Wait, you're talking about training an AI with dynamic flow theory.
Yeah.
What would that even do?
It would create an AI that goes beyond just knowing facts.
Okay.
It would be able to understand how those facts are connected, and how they change over time. Think of it as giving AI a sense of history and context.
So instead of just spitting out information,
Right.
it could understand the why behind things.
Exactly. Take a historical event.
Okay.
Right. A regular AI, it might be able to tell you the date and the key players.
Right.
But a DFT trained AI, it could explain the complex interplay of social and political and economic forces that led to that event.
That's pretty amazing. It's like giving AI the ability to see the big picture,
Yeah.
not just the individual pieces.
Yes.
But let's get specific here. What would this kind of AI actually be capable of doing in the real world?
Well, one area where it could have a huge impact is in prediction and forecasting.
Okay.
Imagine an AI that can analyze the flow of information in financial markets and identify those early warning signs of a crash.
Ooh, wow.
Or predict how a new policy might impact, different sectors of the economy.
That would be incredible.
Hmm.
But I'm also a little, I don't know, I'm a little wary.
Sure.
We've all seen those sci-fi movies
Mhm.
where AI gets a little too smart for its own good.
Yeah, I totally understand that concern. But remember, we're not talking about creating some all-knowing super intelligence. A DFT trained AI would still be a tool.
Okay.
A very powerful tool, but one that, needs to be used responsibly.
Okay, that makes me feel a bit better. So if we're thinking about responsible development,
Yes.
what are some of the ethical, like, considerations we need to keep in mind?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is ensuring that these AI systems are fair and unbiased.
Okay.
Right. If the data that they're trained on reflects, existing inequalities or prejudices,
Yeah.
those biases could be amplified,
Rowie.
leading to unfair or even harmful outcomes.
So it's not just about, like, building smart AI.
Right.
It's about building AI that reflects, like, our values
Yes.
and promotes a more, just an equitable society.
Exactly. And that's going to require a lot of careful thought and collaboration between, AI experts and ethicists and policymakers and the public.
This is all, like, incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
And honestly, a little bit, like, mind-boggling. He feels like we're just, like, scratching the surface of what DFT and DFT-trained AI could, like, do.
We are, and that's what makes it so exciting. We're venturing into like uncharted territory,
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI and how we understand the world around us.
One thing that really struck me when I was reading about DFT was the idea of, like, applying it to human emotions
Well, yeah.
and relationships.
Yeah.
Is that even possible?
It's definitely a complex area, but there's a lot of potential there.
Okay.
Imagine an AI that could analyze the subtle cues in our communication,
Right.
our facial expressions, our tone of voice,
Yeah.
and understand not just what we're saying,
Right.
but how we're feeling.
That sounds a bit like mind reading. What could we even do with that kind of technology?
Well, one application could be in like mental health treatment. Imagine an AI therapist that can personalize therapy
Yeah.
based on, your specific emotional patterns and needs,
Okay.
or like an AI mediator that can help resolve conflicts by
Yeah.
like understanding the underlying emotions driving the dispute.
I can see how that could be, like, incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
But I also wonder about, like, the potential for misuse.
Of course.
Could this kind of AI be used to, like, manipulate people or exploit their emotions?
That's a valid concern, and it's why we need to be extremely careful about how we develop and deploy this technology.
Right.
We need like clear ethical guidelines and safeguards in place
Okay.
to prevent misuse and ensure that these AI systems are used for good.
This is all getting, like, pretty deep. It seems like DFT is not just about technology.
Right.
It's about, like, understanding human nature itself.
You're absolutely right. At its core, DFT is a framework for understanding like how things change,
Ah.
how they evolve, and how they interact. And that applies to everything from the smallest atom
Yeah.
to the most complex human society.
So what you're saying is, like, if we can understand those patterns of change,
Yeah,
we can
Yeah.
potentially understand anything.
that's the idea. It's a bold ambition.
Yeah.
But I think DFT offers a really powerful lens for, exploring those questions and pushing the boundaries of human knowledge.
This has been an incredible start to our deep dive on dynamic flow theory.
Yeah.
But I'm sensing that we're just getting warmed up.
You're right. We've only just begun to explore the potential of this theory
Yeah.
and the mind-boggling possibilities of, DFT-trained AI.
Well, then, let's keep diving. When we come back, I want to hear more about how DFT could be used to tackle some of the biggest challenges facing humanity,
Oh, yeah.
like from climate change to social inequality.
Absolutely. Let's get into it. So, picking up where we left off, you mentioned like climate change and social inequality.
Right,
These
exactly.
like massive issues.
Yeah, how can DFT even, like, begin to make a dent in something like climate change? It seems so huge.
Well, one way is by, using DFT to model those complex interactions
Okay.
between human activity, natural systems, and like the climate. Think of it as like creating a digital twin of the Earth,
Oh, wow.
but one that like accounts for all those dynamic flows of energy and resources and, emissions.
But we could, like, simulate different scenarios.
Yeah.
Like, what happens if we, reduce carbon emissions by a certain amount or switch to renewable energy sources?
Exactly. A DFT-powered model, it could help us like understand the potential impacts of different policy decisions.
Right.
Identify those tipping points in the climate system and even explore like innovative solutions that might not be obvious with more traditional approaches.
That's incredible. It's like having a crystal ball, like showing us
Right.
the potential consequences of our actions
Yeah.
and, like, guiding us toward a more sustainable future.
That's a good analogy. And, it's not just about predicting the future. DFT could also help us understand like the past,
Yeah.
by analyzing, historical data,
Right.
we could identify patterns in those feedback loops that have like contributed to climate change,
Mhm.
giving us valuable insights into, how to mitigate its effects.
Okay, so DFT can help us model climate change.
Yeah.
But what about something like social inequality? That just seems like so much more complex.
Right.
It's really deeply rooted in human behavior, cultural norms. How can DST address that?
It is complex, but that's precisely where DFT can be so helpful. Remember, it's a framework for understanding how systems change over time,
Right.
and that includes social systems.
So you're saying we could use DFT to map out the flow of, power and resources and opportunities within a society.
A DFT model could help us identify those systemic factors that, contribute to inequality, whether it's, discrimination in housing,
Right.
education, employment, or even like the concentration of wealth
Right.
in the hands of a few.
And once we understand those patterns, then we can start to think about how to disrupt them
Yeah.
and create a more equitable society.
Precisely. DFT can help us identify like those leverage points
Yeah.
where interventions can have the greatest impact, whether it's through, policy changes,
Right.
community programs, or even like shifts in those cultural attitudes.
This is all starting to sound a bit utopian.
Yeah.
Are we really saying that DFT can solve all of humanity's problems?
Of course not. DFT is a tool, It's a very powerful tool, but it's not like a magic bullet.
Right.
It can help us understand like complex problems, identify potential solutions, and kind of guide our actions. But ultimately, it's up to us to actually implement those solutions
Right.
and create the kind of world we want to live in.
That's a good reminder. Technology can help, but it's not a substitute
Yeah.
for,
Right.
human agency and
Exactly.
collective action.
Absolutely. And that's another important point about DFT, right? It emphasizes that interconnectedness of things.
Right.
We can't address climate change
Right.
in isolation from social inequality or
Yes.
economic development, in isolation from environmental sustainability. It's all like part of this one big complex system.
I'm starting to see how DFT can help us shift our thinking
Yes.
from this fragmented view of the world
Right.
to a more, holistic one.
That's exactly right. And that shift in perspective, it's essential if we're going to tackle those complex challenges
Yeah.
facing humanity in the 21st century.
When I first started reading about DFT, I thought it was just about computers and algorithms.
Mm.
But it's so much more than that. It's
Yeah.
a way of seeing the world, understanding how everything is connected in this constant state of flux.
You've hit the nail on the head, and that's what makes it so exciting. DFT it isn't just a theory, it's a framework for exploring the unknown,
Yeah.
for pushing those boundaries of human knowledge and understanding.
I'm curious, what are some of the areas where DFT is still being explored?
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of potential for future breakthroughs?
Well, one area that's particularly fascinating is the application of DFT to human consciousness.
Oh.
We've talked about AI, but what about using DFT to understand our own minds?
You're saying we could use DFT to model how our thoughts and emotions and experiences interact
Yeah.
to create our sense of self.
That's the idea. It's a very ambitious goal. But some researchers believe that DFT could offer a new way of understanding consciousness,
Okay.
one that goes beyond, more traditional neurological approaches.
Wow, that would be a total game changer. Imagine being able to map out the flow of consciousness, see how our minds actually work.
It would be revolutionary.
Yeah.
And it could have profound implications for everything
Right.
from mental health treatment
Yeah.
to education
Mm.
to our understanding of creativity and spirituality.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. This is getting pretty deep, even for a deep dive.
I know, it's a lot to take in, but that's the beauty of DFT. It constantly challenges us to expand our thinking, to see the world in these new ways,
Yeah.
and to embrace the complexity of it all.
One thing that keeps coming up for me is this idea of time.
Okay.
It seems like DFT is not just about understanding how things are, but how they change over time. Is that a central part of the theory?
Absolutely. Time is a fundamental dimension in DFT.
Okay.
It's not just a backdrop against which things happen. It's an integral part of the system itself.
So you're saying time is not just a linear progression.
Right.
It's a dynamic force
Yeah.
that's constantly shaping and being shaped by the interactions
Yes.
within a system.
Exactly. And that has some pretty mind-bending implications. For example, some physicists are like exploring whether DFT could help us understand the nature of time itself,
Whoa.
perhaps even leading to new theories of like quantum gravity.
Okay, now you're really, like, pushing the limits of my comprehension. Quantum gravity, time travel, consciousness. It seems like DFT is opening these doors to some, like, pretty wild possibilities.
It is, and that's what makes it so compelling. DFT isn't just a theory, it's an invitation to explore the unknown,
Yeah.
to ask those big questions,
Right.
and to imagine a future where, like, our understanding of the universe and ourselves is constantly evolving.
This has been, like, an incredible journey so far. We've gone from the basics of DFT to modeling, like climate change, social inequality, even human consciousness.
I know, right?
But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have, and as we continue to like explore DFT and develop new technologies based on it, who knows what other like amazing discoveries await us.
All right, folks, before we wrap up this deep dive into dynamic flow theory,
Yeah.
I want to take a moment to just, like, reflect on what we've learned and where we go from here.
Okay. Yeah.
It's clear that DFT is, like, a really powerful framework, one with the potential to, reshape our understanding of the world and ourselves, but it also comes with certain responsibilities.
Of course.
We need to be mindful of how this technology is developed, how it's used,
Right.
and who benefits from it. It's really amazing to think about how far we've come with this. Like, we've
Yeah.
gone from using DFT to, model ecosystems, and now we're talking about, like, unlocking the secrets of human consciousness. It feels like we're really on the verge of, like, a whole new era of understanding. It does, doesn't it? It feels like we're, standing at the edge of this vast, uncharted territory. It's full of incredible promise, but, also potential pitfalls.
And that brings us to something, we haven't really explored fully yet. The potential downsides of DFT.
Right.
I mean, it's a powerful tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. Like, what are some of the risks that we need to be aware of as we, move forward with this technology?
Well, one of the biggest risks is, the potential for misuse.
Right.
Imagine, like, a DFT-powered system that could be used to, predict and manipulate people's behavior,
Okay.
whether it's for, like, commercial gain or political influence or even, more nefarious purposes.
It's like that saying knowledge is power, but in the wrong hands, power can be used to control people, to exploit them.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have, ethical guidelines and regulations in place
Right.
to make sure that DFT is used responsibly and for the benefit of, humanity as a whole. So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the people who are developing it,
Yes.
the values they bring to the table.
Absolutely. We need to be asking, some tough questions like who controls this technology?
Yeah,
Who has access to it?
right.
And how can we prevent it from, being used to reinforce existing inequalities or create new ones?
It's a bit like, the early days of the internet. There was so much, like, optimism about, the potential to connect people, share information, democratize knowledge.
Yeah.
But we also saw how quickly it could be used for things like surveillance and propaganda and the spread of misinformation.
That's a really good analogy. We need to learn from those mistakes,
Yeah.
right? And be proactive in shaping the future of DFT. We need to ensure that it's used to empower individuals, not control them,
Right.
and that it contributes to a more, just and equitable society.
One of the things that's really struck me about DFT is how it, emphasizes that interconnectedness of everything.
Yeah.
It's like that butterfly effect, right?
Yes.
Where a small change in one part of the system can have these, like, ripple effects
Yeah.
throughout the entire web.
That's like a key insight of DFT, and it has some really profound implications for how we think about our actions and their
Mhm.
consequences. Like, we're all part of this like complex dynamic flow,
Yeah.
and our choices, no matter how small they seem, can have far-reaching impacts.
It makes you realize that we can't afford to, like, think in silos anymore.
Mm,
Climate change, social justice, economic development, technological innovation, it's all connected.
Yeah.
We need to be thinking systemically, understanding those connections,
Yes.
and working together to create, a more sustainable and equitable future.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And that's where I see like the greatest potential of DFT,
Yeah.
not just as a tool for like prediction and analysis, but as a framework for, collaboration and collective action.
It's like we're all, like, in this giant canoe together, paddling down the river of time.
Mhm.
We need to be coordinating our efforts, navigating the currents, working together to, avoid those rocks and rapids.
Oh, I love that metaphor. That captures the essence of DFT so perfectly. We're all in this together, right?
Yeah.
And our collective fate depends on our ability to understand and navigate those, dynamic flows that shape our world.
So where do we go from here? Like, what are some of the key things we need to be like thinking about as we, continue to explore the potential of DFT?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to invest in research and development, both in those like technical aspects of DFT
Okay.
and in its ethical implications.
Right.
We need to support the scientists and the engineers and the ethicists who are working to make this technology safe and reliable and beneficial for, all of humanity.
That makes sense. Like, we need to be pushing the boundaries of knowledge,
Mhm.
but also making sure that we're doing it responsibly.
What else? We also need to foster dialogue and collaboration.
Yeah.
This isn't just about experts in labs. It's
Wow.
about engaging the public and policymakers
Yeah.
and communities in conversations about how DFT can be used to address the challenges that we face.
So it's about like democratizing knowledge
Exactly.
and making sure everyone has a voice in shaping the future of this technology.
DFT has the potential to be a really transformative force in the world, but only if we use it wisely and collaboratively.
Right.
It's up to all of us to make sure that it's used for good, not for ill, and that it contributes to a future where everyone can thrive.
Well, folks, we've come to the end of our deep dive into dynamic flow theory. It's been an incredible journey full of, mind-bending concepts, tantalizing possibilities, and thought-provoking challenges.
I've really enjoyed, exploring this topic with you. It's always inspiring to see, how curious and engaged people are with these, complex ideas.
And that's what makes it all so worthwhile, right?
Yeah.
The more we learn about the world, the more we realize how much there is still to discover.
Right.
And that's what keeps us going. That, sense of wonder
Yeah.
and that drive to explore the unknown.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure joining you on this deep dive.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you've, enjoyed the ride and that it sparked your curiosity about dynamic flow theory and its potential to, shape the future. Keep those minds open, keep exploring, and keep asking those big questions. Until next time.